Welcome to the SARE Ladies podcast, the sister brand of Subtle Asian Real Estate, where our mission is to get more people that look like us participating in the real estate industry. We invite experts to not just talk about real estate, but also about our unique identity as Asian women and the cultural values that shape who we are as investors. I'm Anita Wong.
And I'm Tiffany Lee. We're both real estate agents and investors based in the Bay Area and New York City. Whether you're a seasoned real estate pro or just starting out, there's something for everyone here. So pour yourself a glass of wine or boba tea and join us as we celebrate the achievements and unleash the untapped potential of AAPI women in the real estate industry.
Welcome to the SARE Ladies podcast.
Now let's get on with the show. But first, a word from one of our fabulous sponsors. Dr. Hua Nguyen and her husband, Dr. Jaime Gonzalez, both optometrists by trade and owners of multiple multi-million-dollar optometry practices in the Dallas area, founded Black Steel Investment Group with a passion to invest to impact. With the foundation forged on 3 pillars, integrity, community, and legacy, they put their investors at the forefront of everything they do. The couple are both seasoned, full-time multifamily investors, syndicators, and asset managers who, together with their investors, have invested in over 6,900 units as general and or limited partners in Texas, Arizona, Florida, and the Carolinas, with total assets valued at over $480 million. Juan and Jaime are always working to find new investment opportunities for their investors. The couple enjoys traveling the world for delicious food and interesting cultures with their 8-year-old daughter Athena and have a puppy named Coco Ali. Now on to the show.
Welcome to the SARE Ladies podcast. I'm Anita Wong, your host, and I'm joined by my co-host Tiffany Lee for a very special episode celebrating Asian Heritage Month. At SARE Ladies podcast, we are dedicated to amplifying AAPI voices and supporting our community, and that is why AAPI Heritage Month is so important to us. It is a time to recognize and appreciate the rich cultural traditions of the Asian diaspora. And so with that in mind, we are so excited to have our featured guest, Giang Nguyen, to join us. Say hi, Yang.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me.
So awesome to have you. So Yang is the founder of One River Capital, a seasoned multifamily syndicator and a retired published scientist and an immigrant from Vietnam. And her passion is to help busy professionals and immigrants build passive income and generational wealth through real estate investing. So with that in mind, let's dive into the episode and hear from our inspiring guest. Welcome to the show.
Welcome, Yang. So first question, why don't you tell us a little bit about your cultural and professional background?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me, Tiffany and Anita. I am so excited to be here and to be chatting about this topic. So I grew up in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. It is a hot, bustling place. It's equivalent of New York City for the US, maybe without the heat. But yeah, I grew up in a large city and I came over here for college. I went to a small liberal arts school in Maine, so you can see the adjustment that coming from a hot city to middle of nowhere, Maine for college. I ended up majoring in biology. And then after that, I came to Philadelphia because my sister was already here. I ended up working as a scientist for almost 10 years. I was working on gene therapy for a blood disorder called hemophilia A. And then I started investing in real estate since 2015. I started out, and maybe this might be common for a lot of immigrants, but I did not know anything about real estate. I did not know mortgage exists because back home, mortgage doesn't exist. I didn't know what you can do with real estate investing. I just didn't know anything about this whole real estate investing war. And when I talk to a lot of my friends who are immigrants, I think a lot of people share that common feeling where they don't know that real estate investing exists and they don't know what's possible. So I started investing in real estate, and now my passion is to help other people, especially the immigrants community, to grow their wealth in real estate, especially through passive investing so that they can live their life, build their American dream, and be able to live the life that they want to craft.
And that's a great segue. And you mentioned you went to college in Maine. Did you feel that you naturally, like, what the kinds of friends that you made, do you feel like you assimilated with the immigrant community very, very quickly, or was there like a culture shock? And who within, I guess, like your group of friends, because you mentioned, like, you did, as immigrants, they didn't know about real estate. So who do you credit with, opening that door for you of like unlocking that piece?
Great question. So for me, I mentioned that when I moved to Philadelphia, my sister was already living here. So my sister is actually a real estate agent, and she started investing uh, way before I did. We have a huge age gap. My sister is 11 years older than I am. So one thing is, when I came over here in the US, my parents were not here. My sister is here. And with her being the older sister, she essentially assuming the parental role in our relationship. And yeah, so she started investing first. And when I actually got my first single family, just 4 blocks from where I was living, that was a foreclosure. And that was my very first project. And we did not have water, no electrical, no plumbing, no HVAC. And indeed, there's actually was a giant tree in the backyard that was growing over 2 story tall and growing into this foundation wall. So because the property has been vacant for over 20 years. So first project out of the bat was a full rehab project. And my sister was helping me rehabbing it. My ex was helping me rehabbing it. And at that point, I was doing a lot of the work ourselves. That was my crash course into construction 101. A lot of YouTubing, a lot of researching, a lot of crying, and I was going through the process because I didn't have a community to help me. And so that's why now I really appreciate that community aspect, right? Like what you guys are doing to have a community to share the learning, to share the struggles, the victories, and just kind of going through this process together. It's just more fun that way.
That's great. I love that your sister was such a huge influence on you. So since she was a real estate agent, I'm assuming she was your key inspiration in getting your foot in the door. How has caring, because I think you mentioned here, how's caring for your immigrant parents, because that's such a pervasive part of Asian culture as we grow older, like filial piety. Am I saying it right, Anita? Is it filial piety? I always do this. I'm like,
Filial piety.
see, filial
think so.
piety. I'm like,
Big word.
piety? Yeah. So
I know. I'm like, I'm not gonna attempt to pronounce that word.
so how has caring for your immigrant parents impacted your personal and real estate career, and what have you personally learned from the experience?
Yeah. So I definitely want to share my why in real estate and how I even think about investing in real estate, right? So I shared that my first project was an accidental project. It was just my primary home. And so after that project, I start learning more about real estate. And it always a thought of like, yeah, I could just invest in real estate, have a W-2, and just keep it going slowly, steadily. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? So after my single family, I move on to 2 duplex conversion projects where I convert single family into duplex, and they are now become my long-term rentals. And then I wanted to go to medical school. So I was spending a lot of time to pursue that aspect. I think at that point, I was doing what I think was, I want to say, expected of me, right? The idea of going to a good school, getting a good job, getting a high paying career. And then after that is kind of the like, now what? Like, I feel like people don't talk too much about the now what after you get a good high paying job. Like, what is this all for? So I was totally in that rat race. I was in a pursuit of a higher paying job, a more prestigious career, because somehow I think that was kind of ingrained in me that that was what I was supposed to do. And then in the midst of that, my dad actually got quite sick back home. And so he was hospitalized back home. And that was kind of a wake-up call for me because even though I was working in a lab where I had more flexibility than most, I started out my job with a 4-week paid time off, and it was increasing to 6 week, and it could accumulate up to like 12 weeks. That was the reality that I was in. And even then, the idea of being able to take months off from work to go back home to be with my dad was not really a possibility because even though I had the time in an academic lab, we had more projects than we had people. And so there is this like pressure of like, okay, I can't leave because no one could take over my job. So I couldn't really go back home and spend as much time as with my dad as I would have liked to. So that was a wake up call for me because all of a sudden I realized that I was doing what I was supposed to. And yet when I wanted to leave to be able to be with my parents, I couldn't because my W-2 did not allow me to have that flexibility. So that was a wake up call when I realized that I really need that flexibility that come with having a passive income. So during the pandemic, I pushed really hard to grow my personal portfolio. And I was very focused. I picked multifamily in a cash flowing market with a single goal of replacing my income so I can actually make a call on how I spend my time. So I pushed really hard to grow from 5 doors to 28 doors just within 6 months in a cash flowing market. And so that really helped me replace my income so that I could now actually spend more time with my parents. So since then, my parents has come over, they have migrated over, they're now here. We always want them to be here with us because we really want them to be able to have the healthcare system that we have here in the US. And so, yeah, I do think that having my parents and having that desire to be with my parents, to spend time with my parents, to take care of them, really helped propel me forward with my real estate career. That was my main why. And yeah, so now what I love to do is I love to share more information about real estate and to help other people grow their passive income through real estate so that they can make a call on what they want to do with their time, whether that is to spend with their family, to travel, to pursue a hobby, whatever that is.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah. I think that nailed on the head the financial independence and the freedom and time that you get from passive income versus, the constraints of a W-2 kind of keeping you in front of your desk.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, and I like that, we talk about often is like the agency, right? Of like what a good real estate portfolio can provide women, right? And it's like, the chance to take care of your parents, and bring them over and be together. And I think that's such a powerful thing. And it's often not even, it's about the obligations of a job that keeps you there sometimes. It's not always the money, it's the pressures of wanting to do well, and also it's that's also what you were taught, right? Do well in your work and do well in school, go to Ivy League or whatever, and that can be just so counterintuitive sometimes, or it can be at odds with our obligations to our parents, right? So I think about that.
No, absolutely. I think because I think I was so in the pursuit of what was expected of me, I stopped thinking about the why behind of all of this, right? So now what I often ask myself is how can I be intentional with what I do? And I think I fully support people who want to pursue a W-2. What I really want for everyone is just to have a choice of what to do with their time, whether that is to pursue a really strong career, a very satisfying career that is really support and that's really got you out of bed in the morning, right? Whatever it is that people do that get them out of bed in the morning, I'm fully in support of that. And I think it's just important that we ask ourselves, what is that we want? Like how can we be intentional and align our actions in that pursuit of what it is that we truly want?
Yeah, I love that. Um, I guess leads me to my next question. How did you balance the cultural expectations and obligations of taking care of your family with your own personal goals and aspirations? Like, what advice would you give to others facing similar challenges in their own cultural context?
Great question. I will be honest and say that this is something that I am continuously figuring out. And I don't have all the answers, and I don't expect anyone to ever have all the answers, right? I think the best advice that I could give people is to maybe remove all expectations and in what they be creative in how they can design the life that they want. So I
Mm,
do think that all of us have a desire to be there for our parents and to take care of our parents, right? I think that comes in many different forms, in many different ways. And then we also all have desire to pursue our career, to do something that really fire us up. And that might also come in many different ways, and it may look different for everyone. So I think the most important thing for all of us to do is to be creative and to understand that we actually get a say in how we want this life to look like, right? We, for us personally, we have think about a lot of different options, right? So my parents are here. My parents do want to live with one of us, and they have lived with me. They have lived with my sisters. That's where their grandkid is. That's where my nephew is. So they're living with my sister. But they have lived with me. They have lived with my sister. We have pursued an option of having a duplex where they can have their own unit. But why it is right next to my sisters, where they're living with their own family. So we have pursued that option. We have pursued an option of having my parents live close, just a couple of doors down from my sisters. So we have pursued a lot of options to see what would work for us and what would work for our parents. And I do think it's require a lot of conversations. It require a lot of getting down to really what it is that we want. And I think ultimately, right, what all of us want is be able to spend time together, be able to build on the memories that we have created, and be able to just really live our life the best that we can. So I think given all of that in mind, and if we're all coming from that when we're having a conversations, I think that might remove a lot of expectation and be able to really tell us like, hey, this works for me, this will work for you, and just having that creative conversation to craft something that works for everyone. Yeah.
Do you feel that that creative conversation is more of a westernized thing that you adopted? Like that viewpoint, is that more of an American view, or do you think that that's very? What are your thoughts there of like how you approach
Mm,
this aha moment?
that's a great question. For me, I do think that coming to the US, having a different culture, for me to adapt, I do think that I have to adapt using a creative approach, right? The idea of coming from a completely different culture, a completely different living environment to Maine in the cold weather, middle of nowhere. I do think that it coming back to what I mentioned about being intentional. I think always asking the why of like what does that look like, and like why do people want this, right? Because sometimes I feel like people are very stuck with how they want to get to the why without understanding that there's different how that can happen if we clear on the why. So I don't personally know if that is like a developed, I want to say like skill. But for me, what I always want to achieve is, talk to my parents and just understand like, okay, like what is it that you really want? Like, what is that why? And then I think when I get to that why, and I think once I get my parents to understand that like I get their why and I get what they want. Now we can be creative on the how to get to what they want. But yeah, I don't entirely know where that comes from. Maybe it just comes from a lot of information. Like I mentioned, I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answer. I did not get here. Like this is not the first conversation I have with my parents and everything just come together. This is a whole process, lots of conversation over the years. And of course we we bump up against things, we have a conversation. But I think that's why we're always coming back to the, like why are we even having this conversation, right? Which is that we love one another. We are here to support one another. And then, the conversation developed. But yeah, I don't have all the answers, you guys.
I figured it out. It's not an American versus Asian thing. It's the scientist in you. Everything you explain is the scientific method. I like the why
Maybe,
first,
yeah.
and then the how, and then figuring out the procedure. It's like, here's my hypothesis, and here's the experiment. There you go.
Yeah,
There's
that's great transferable skill. Everything an experiment. Let's see if this fail or not.
I like that.
And I'm still in that
great
pursuit.
too. I think parents sometimes have no idea also what they like. They're the why, I feel like there's a lot of, at least with my own parents, that they are saying the things that is culturally the successful thing to do, right? Or like the like you're supposed to live with me, you have to take care of me until I'm old and gray. It's very taboo to send your parents to an elderly home. It's so I think there's a lot of that, right? And like of course I want to take care of my parents in that way, and I want to honor them and how they want to grow old. But sometimes I think they like, are you sure you want to live with me? Like, are you sure you want to deal with more of this? And then it's like, maybe we can just live a door or two down from each other. Would that still be living with each other? And then we can keep our sanity. Does that still get to it? I think.
Oh,
yeah.
I totally hear that. And when I try to put myself in my parents' shoes, they came over a few years back. I think probably 7 years now. My dad is now driving, so oh my goodness, I am a little bit concerned, and just
Man,
also really proud of him.
Make it in Ho Chi Minh though. I mean, I've even driving there.
Yeah, but like back home, we were driving in like motorcycles. Like it's a lot of motorcycles, and they're professional. Like they're not professional, but they're like really good at that. But like over here, my dad is now what, 70, 75? Yeah, over 75 now. And he just got his driver license for a year. And so he is now driving. He's loving it. And so, I mean, I'm really proud of them for like taking that on. They are learning English and they're practicing as whenever they go to the supermarket. So I'm really proud of them for like taking a lot of this on, like for them to come over late, like in their 60, and be able to adjusting to the cold, be able to really embrace all the season that we have here. So sometimes I think when I put myself in, like I have my own immigration experience, right? I have my own experience as an immigrant, and my parents have own experience as an immigrant. So sometimes I'm really, I think even just curious about what that's like for them, and just having them tell me, what is it that they want? Because like, just like what you said, Anita, I think they themselves have their own, I want to say preconceived notion, right? They have their own version of what a successful retirement would look like. And I don't think they thought that being in the US was in their first, craft, like first draft of this retirement plan, right? So I think everyone is growing, everyone is adjusting to what this new dream now looks like. And I think we can all just have conversation around like, okay, what works? Like, what about this? And yeah, in my experience, it takes a lot of conversations to get to some final one draft. And then,
Yeah.
it's gonna keep growing.
But kudos to your parents for at that late age to make such a big
Right?
change in life. I think it's incredible. I mean, my dad doesn't even like it when I buy a new brand of salt. Like he's just very like he doesn't want to change and I can imagine it's just hard and it's different to make friends at that age and to
Yeah.
have to be in a completely new one where you're not really socializing on the same level as if you came here
Mm-hmm.
in your 20s or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, kudos to that for, you know, embracing change at such a late age and it's a hard thing. They
Yeah, for
sound like
sure.
they're having a successful retirement though,
Oh,
if they're having fun.
they are troopers. They are troopers, and they're so cute. They always like my dad loved photography, so they always like now that it's the spring, everything, they would go out
Oh.
and then my mom would be the model in front of all these flowers and squirrels
Oh,
because like we
the
don't have
classic
squirrels
mother
back
pose.
home. I know the
They're
classic mother
always
pose
like
of like
holding the flower on
peeking
the
out.
tree.
Yep, peeking out behind the flowers, like till a little bit, till a little here, a little close. Yeah. Yep, all of that. And they're on Facebook. So they are fully embracing this new adventure that they're having. And I
Look
think
at
that's
this.
kind of what, that's what I love for them, right? To be able to just have time to travel and to explore this new culture, more of that classic flower pose with different flowers. Yeah,
I like how
I'm all here for that.
we all immediately had the vision of our head, like we know how she's posing in these photos.
Yeah.
Tiffany, you nailed that. I was just like, that's exactly it. Oh my God.
Hey, we're gonna take a little break, but in the meantime, here's a shameless plug for one of our amazing sponsors. What are your goals for the future? Whether it's starting a business, growing your investment portfolio, or securing your financial future, you need a lawyer on your side to protect your interests. With their expert knowledge and years of experience, a lawyer will help you navigate the complex legal landscape and ensure that your interests are protected every step of the way. So why wait? Start planning for your future today and contact the law office of Ronald Rohde. They will help you reach your investment goals. Trust us, your future self will thank you. Now on to the show.
Oh my
Okay,
goodness.
cool. Well, okay, one last question from me then. So I think that we as like American, I mean, I'm Chinese born American. I'm born here, and I feel like there's a lot of I think stereotypes about immigrant families I think that we have, and there's certainly a barrier between, people like the Asians that were born here versus, that did, come from a different country. And so what advice do you give Americans who want to be more supportive and understanding of immigrant families? And how can we
Mm,
create a more inclusive and welcoming society?
mm. That is such a great question. Um, for me, what I'm learning more and more about is I want to say there's no immigrant stories that is like one another. I think everyone has their own unique story and everyone has their own unique challenges. So I would think the best way to approach this is to create the space for people to tell their stories. And the willingness to have conversations around that, I think is very important key to understand. Because like as you mentioned, right, Anita, like my story as an immigrant versus your story of being born here and growing up here, we have two different stories, and we also have different challenges. I do think that for most, we have a shared love for family and a shared desire to care for our families. Um, but I do think that if everyone create the space to have the conversation, to hear different stories, and to understand that everyone has different stories, I think that'd be a great place to start. I can tell you one specific thing that I think I'm not say run into, but so for example, me as a younger professional when I was working at my job. I think, often people look at me as being young, not having kids. And so most often the assumption is that I wouldn't have a lot of commitment. But in fact, for me, even though I don't have kids, I have parents who are new to this country who need my support. So even though I don't have kids where I like, okay, sorry, I have to take my kids to the doctors, I have to take my parents to the doctors because they need a translator. They need to know how to navigate the healthcare system. And oh my goodness, I am still navigating the healthcare system. So like for them to like navigate the healthcare system, that's a lot. So I feel like there's a lot of things that I'm stepping into to take care of my parents that are not maybe typical of what you would expect of like maybe, either late 20s or young 30s to have to do. And so I think just creating the space to understand that like I think for a lot of us, the caretaking is not just for the next generation, but it's also for our previous generation. Like for example, I took my mom to see an ophthalmologist, and we were there at 9 a.m. and we left at noon, and we're like, okay, yeah, let's grab some lunch, and then I'll go back to work. But then my mom has to go back to see the doctor again because she was seeing some like bubbles in her eyes. So that doctor appointment took from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So that's almost my whole day of work, which was why I felt that I could not really be a good fit for like a W-2 that is very structured. And this is why I need the flexibility that I need that is supported by real estate. So I do think that, everyone's story is different. And so just creating the flexibility for everyone's different challenges is very important in this new age, so to speak.
I love that. Yang, I love how your story resonates so much with a lot of it almost for me seems like you did everything out of order because your parents immigrated here later in life when usually it's in the reverse, right? Usually the immigrant parents come to America and then they raise their kids Americanized. And it's so funny. I hear so many stories of like friends when they're like 7, 8 years old going with their parents, like translating government documents for them. And it's and like, going to the doctor's appointments, translating what the doctor's saying to them. And they're like, and it's a responsibility of like a 7 to like 8 year old. And they're just like, and so I think in a way it's kind of cool that you did it in reverse because you don't have that trauma, childhood trauma of like an immigrant kid doing all of that. So I think it's really neat that you were able to do it in reverse and have a more mature outlook of it. Like, I love your perspective of it. It's very, it comes from a sense of gratefulness, and I feel like a lot of like, the kids that do it in reverse, there's a little bit more resentment in there, but I love that you grew up with the traditional values, and this is just like everything is a blessing to you. I love how you arrived at your why, because you came here older and had like a more mature perspective of it. Like, you weren't forced into America. You weren't a victim of your circumstances like you were if you were a kid. It was an active choice when you were in college that you wanted to go to school in the States. So I think you having that agency from the start makes, your story so compelling. That's great. Anita, anything to add?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. No, Tiff, I think that is like a great point to bring up, right? I think this is why I mentioned that there's no stories that is the same. Everyone has their own challenges that they deal with. And so I think it's just a matter of having a lot of conversations to really craft like and design what that life looks like. Because I also want to hear like you guys' perspective, right? And you guys have shared what that looks like. And I'm sure you guys also have a lot of challenges, like you mentioned, growing up in a new culture that you didn't quite choose to, and then being this environment. Yeah, so I greatly appreciate you guys sharing that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much.
before you sign off on this episode, this is ad hoc, and he was like, "What are you doing?" But this is really funny because you said, "All right, I'm dropping in a chat." I pulled up a picture of cherry blossoms. I want everyone to change their background to the cherry blossoms because usually before our episodes, Anita likes to take a group picture of us. So I figured let's do something different. Let's. Wait, I'll show you. I'll show you what I'm gonna do with my screen first. I'm gonna change my background. I just dropped it in the chat, you guys. So
well, now people listening to our podcast will have to
make sure you like it. This is I am posing. This is the Asian pose. So a group project a group picture where we're all doing this.
Okay, well, maybe we'll have to do this after, but this is hilarious.
All right. I want it in the episode, and then Anita, do the sign off with the cherry blossoms in the background.
With the cherry blossom. Okay, let me download it. Also, I forgot, you guys. Can I share also a bit about how my parents are using real estate to support their retirement?
Absolutely.
Can we circle back with a question and why I'm gonna download?
Yes.
We're gonna have to, you know what? Let's just leave this part in. Less editing. I think this is so funny. Okay, so we're gonna, while you guys are putting up the picture, I love that you're
I'm cracking up.
We're waiting for you to join us in DC. Yang.
Okay, I am
for the Cherry Blossom Festival.
This is not quite accurate because you need to have a giant flower next to your face. It's like it has to be right next to your face.
Get in there. Find the
it has to be next to your face, and then you're almost kind of hiding a little bit.
It's on this side.
People are gonna be so confused.
Okay, let me change my virtual background.
Guys, if you are listening, make sure you see the video version of this podcast right now because this is.
This is perfect.
Anita, do you have your phone now? Look, take the group picture. I'll take the group picture. This is so funny. The selfie. All right. I want to be on this side too with you guys, so I match. This is so.
I'm just imagining how my mom would do it. My mom is such a diva, guys. I have a zillion of these pictures.
Me too. My parents love it. And it's always like behind the flowers of just like covering the face a little bit, so it's like looking nice and lean and covered by a flower.
I wish I had the prop.
I had those pictures growing up.
Like put it in front of our face on the green screen.
Oh my god! Yeah, I had those pictures growing up. They are.
Every time I see a purple or pink flower anywhere on the street, whatever, I'm just like, well, there she goes. So, you know, she has to go take a picture with it. We'll have to stop for the flowers, guys. Sorry.
That's amazing. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Wait, okay. Sorry, I lost our train of thought. All right, so talk about your parents.
Oh yeah. Oh my god, yes. I also do want to share. I guess just the power of real estate investing to support retirement. Because as I share, my parents came over here later. And so when they came over, they're not qualified for Social Security. They have some pension back home, but we're in Vietnam, third world country. So whatever pension they have from back home doesn't really support their retirement here in the US. So what they have been doing and what we have been helping them to do is to invest in real estate using the saving that they have so that it can have the cash flow to support their retirement. So I just do want to mention that because I know a lot of people, when I talk to a lot of my friends who still have parents from back home, one thing that a lot of things they have to think about, right? One, where their parents gonna live. Two, like you mentioned, would they even like living here in a new environment where they don't have friends? They have family, but they don't have friends. They don't have that same social support. Three, do they even like the weather? Are they going to live somewhere warm all around? Or are they going to live somewhere with the snow? And then four is really how do they support their retirement in a new country with a new living standards or cost? And so I just want to share how we're doing that to help support our parents in their retirement. My sister's an agent. She's also investors. I'm an investor. So we help them, buy small multifamily here in the US where that cash flow can help support their retirement. I'm helping them essentially with my own investment to like help support their health insurance, what that looks like. Some practical tips I can give there is probably to think like when you talk to your parents, like if this is in your plan, right, to help support their retirement here in the US, one tip I can give is kind of, again, always start with that end goal in mind, right? So I always have conversation with them about like, okay, what does that number looks like for you to be able to live here comfortably? So usually a lot of that would means we have to save a lot for healthcare expense because they're older. So definitely help them set that up. What does the living expense look like? And then once that end number comes into place, now I can work backward to see like, okay, how many rentals I would need to help them support this number. So that's just some practical tips if you're looking to support your parents during retirement and how you can kind of work backwards to kind of get to that.
Do you
A
handle all the
question.
operations? Do you
Yeah,
do you
same
handle
question.
all the operations, or are your parents hands-on here? Are you
No, we handle, my sister and I handle the operations. The reason why is they don't speak English, so it's very hard for them to navigate any of that. Also for them when they come over, right? Like building credit score, building a lot of that is a challenge. So it's hard for them to become bankable because they don't have an income, they don't have a lot of this. So a lot of that depends on us to help them be bankable and help support in that environment. So I would definitely say again here, right? No story is the same. Be creative with how you can get to your goal. Um, at the same time, right? Understand what that means for you. Like I think what I really want to make sure everyone understand is that this is a choice, that you don't have to do anything. Like all of this is coming from love, but like you don't have to do anything to express that love. So I want people to make sure people are empowered to do what they want with their life. So for example, right, I'm fully for property management. My job is not to manage the property. I help them analyze the property. I help them understand whether this is a good fit or not. And I help direct, like, okay, if this is your goal, then I would prefer that you start investing in this market, like the market that I'm in, because I already have team in place. I have all this in place that I can help you support your investing. So I help them plug into a system that I already have, versus actually self-manage the building for them. Um, and again, right, this is an example of a conversation there because when they first came over, they're certainly in the mindset of like, no, we want to manage our own building because that's more money for us, right? So as you may imagine, like Asian parents, they want to do everything. The idea of outsourcing anything at all and paying people to outsource is like no. And so it
Mhm.
requires a lot of conversation. Like still right now, like my sister managed some of their buildings and I'm still in the process of talking them through like, hey, what we want is to have the time to spend with you. Like what we don't want to do is spend this time that we already don't have to manage the building when we can just like outsource this out for 8 to 10% per month and just have that time. Like whatever that looks like, right? $100 a month, like is it worth it, mom and dad, if we cannot have the time to spend with you? So it's kind of like structure in that sense, but yeah, like I mentioned, lots of conversations and kind of helping them understand what is important,
yeah.
Yeah,
really.
I think my dad, I
Yeah.
think I'm always arguing with my family about also like all the DIY projects they want to do. And I'm like, I don't know
Hmm.
how to. There's one time where, we were working on a kind of a fix and flip. My dad insisted on doing the floor
Hmm.
himself. And then he hurt his back, and then I had to spend 6 months of taking him to the hospital because of his back. I'm like, you also ain't no spring chicken anymore, Dad.
Yeah.
It's like,
I'll add, my dad is doing renovations to our house right now because my brother's wedding is next month and we need to get everything looking nice for when they do the bride pickup. We are at the 11th
Mm.
hour, ladies and gentlemen, and my
Yeah.
dad is just rushing. Like, we had a
yeah.
whole year, and I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. We like
I
hire
struggle
people he
all
won't.
the time of like, and it's like always a thing of like working smarter, not harder, right? And it's such an anti-immigrant mentality. And I'm always feeling like guilty when I'm hiring someone to do something. I actually even yell at my husband for always wanting to hire out the thing. And I'm like, but I feel like you're spending too much money. You're spending too much money. But that's not always the case, and I think as like young, I feel like as young professionals or whatever, we have and having access to things like SARE, you kind of learn about like all the ways that you can work smarter. Syndication, like, and like you no longer have to be doing fix and flips. There's a thing that you can actually like 10x your like cash flow like it with the same amount of work, and they're like, we don't trust it, because they only trust the things that they know. They trust the DIY project. They trust the the like unlicensed contractors and or like that you picked up from Home Depot. And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't think I'm in this boat anymore.
You know what? It's funny because that DIY mentality sneaks up in like any type of entrepreneurial pursuit that I feel like we pursue as Asians. Like even me and Anita working together, we're so used to being so self-sufficient that it's even us, like, maybe we're not building a house together, like per se right now, Anita, but like, everything that we do for this podcast, it started very DIY and like now we've delegated and that's how we scaled. It's like that letting go piece. It's so big for us.
Even my tax, I was just like in an earlier episode, I was like, I used TurboTax for way too long for how much real estate I have. And that was the immigrant thing, right? It's just like, you can do it on your own. And then, I'm like, wow, the liability I exposed myself to them. Thank God I didn't get audited.
Liability.
Oh my gosh.
We expose ourselves to so much liability.
So much liability. And I can
so much. And I think like for us, I was gonna say for us, like we had that growth phase and we have this community, right? To like, hey, you guys, like money is not the be all and all situation, right? Like ultimately money is meant to serve for something, right? It's to serve your life. So what's the point of getting money if your life is miserable? And I think that's a really hard concept, right? And our parents are taught to be self-sufficient, like you said, to really save money, right? Even when I was telling my parents that like, hey, I am quitting my W-2 to become a full-time investor, it's like that was a conversation because, and I can't tell you how many times I have heard, are you sure you don't want to go to pharmacy school and become a pharmacist? Like it's really high paying job. Like, why don't you just do that instead of like quitting your science job? And even when I'm telling them like, hey, mom, dad, like I reached my financial freedom, like I can leave my W-2. There is that like stability piece that is very hard for them to wrap their head around, that somehow a job equals stability versus like a job is your whole thing is depending on someone else, right? But I think this is why it's very new concept for them, and lots of conversations required for that.
And maybe it's a very special American thing, but it's definitely an older mentality that you get wealth by working hard and at a W-2 income producing job but actually it's about saving on your taxes. The faster way to
That's a very American thing, because I feel like in Vietnam, what's the tax structure there? Like I imagine like there's so many loopholes to get creative with in the tax laws in America in like the American system. So that's like a foreign thing for like Asian people to wrap their head around too, because they're just like, saving money, don't want to take on debt, and like there's so many factors in play there.
The debt thing. Like we don't have like I mentioned, we don't really have the mortgage system back home, so like they don't understand what debt means and how there can be good debt and bad debt. All of that is a very very new thing for them to wrap their head around. And that DIY, because otherwise you're gonna get ripped off, right? Like everybody is out to take advantage of you instead of people are looking to support you and you can support one another, right? But I think it's a new concept, and
Okay.
That's
Well, I don't want to run too long, but thank you for sharing your
Mhm.
story with us, and also, just ways on how we as Americans can support immigrants. And I think it's a great way to celebrate Asian Heritage Month. And so thank you for being our special guest. How can our listeners find you, Yang?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that. I have my website at onerivercapital.com. That is spelled out ONE, rivercapital.com. And I am on Instagram and Facebook at that salsa investor, salsa as in the dance. What I haven't shared yet is I am a competitive salsa dancer. So I actually have been training for salsa competition in the last, I'm gonna say 5 years. So that's what I spend a lot of my times on as well. So that's also another push for me to use real estate to, have this freedom for my
Fun.
passion.
that just gave me
Yeah.
chills down my spine. Did you just pick this up 5 years ago? The salsa dancing? I love that.
Oh my God, yeah. I started out with traditional Vietnamese dance and I've always danced my whole life. And then 5 years ago, I went to like outdoor dancing and it was like salsa and I didn't know what that was. I only know salsa from Zumba. So, so I didn't know what that whole world looks like. And yeah, it has very complex. I love it. It's like a new language that you're learning that you can have this conversation with anyone you met with and just share a dance. So I was really loving that connection with new people. And yeah, I got hooked. And so I have been training and competing and performing and choreographing and all that world. And yeah, I love it.
Oh my God. We have 3 minutes left, and that's all I want to
No.
talk about. No, we
Yeah.
don't have we don't have 3 minutes left. Sorry.
We don't, because they're gonna have to catch it on our next episode. Okay, if you guys
Okay,
want
to
to
be
hear about it,
continued. Salsa
catch it
dance.
on our next episode. As we talk about, actually, we're going to be talking about online auction with Yang. So, yeah, catch us on our next episode. Bye, guys.
Attention, all trailblazing women. Are you ready to level up your leadership game and make a lasting impact? Since the recording of our podcast with the fabulous Michelle Ngo here on SARE Ladies, we have officially released the date of our Women's Leadership Summit, happening July 27th to the 28th this year in Costa Mesa, California, in conjunction with SARECon.
Join us for an empowering event packed with inspiring speakers and interactive workshops designed to supercharge your soft skills and prepare you for your upcoming real estate events. You'll connect with like-minded women from around the country, sharing stories, experiences, and strategies to shatter the bamboo ceiling and change the world together.
We've got an incredible lineup of speakers, including trailblazers like Christine Chow of Texas Urban Realty, Gina Shin of Fractional and Shin Equity Partners, Jenny Locke of Zen Coast Homes, and many more amazing women who are going to share their personal journeys and challenges to teach you the techniques they learned to be successful in the world of real estate. Plus, you'll have the opportunity to join smaller breakout sessions where you can learn practical skills and strategies to level up your own life and career. So, are you ready to ignite your inner fire and unleash your full potential? The Women's Leadership Summit 2023 is the event for you. To get tickets, click on our show notes linking to the Eventbrite. Hurry up, tickets sell out fast.
See you there, ladies.
Thank you for tuning in to the SARE Ladies podcast hosted by Anita Wong and Tiffany Lee. Special thanks to Subtle Asian Real Estate, LLC, our parent company.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review or follow SARE Ladies on Spotify and Instagram at Subtle Real Estate. You can also click on our show notes to subscribe to our newsletters to stay on top of our news and upcoming events. Until next time, Pod Squatters.